This is system hardening because if you're doing IT security management, like if you are in IT department in charge of security, besides Splunk is incident response software. You try to detect attack, try to prevent attack. Another responsibility for you is scanning your internal network, constantly checking your internal network and computers to find any computer is vulnerable. So you can use the scanning, all these tools to do that. But if you find a computer that has potential vulnerability, you can either ask the computer user to either upgrade it, or you can help the computer user to do the upgrade. So system hardening is like that case. You find a computer in your organization is vulnerable, like provide unnecessary service, or has a very old version of the server software, then you cannot take this server off because it is used by some of your employee. Then the only way for you to do is try to harden the system, try to patch the system, try to remove unnecessary service, try to make it not vulnerable anymore. So that's the system hardening meaning. For system hardening, my slide is not complete. It's only about Linux. Of course, a major system hardening task is the hardening of the Windows computer. Windows, like a client computer, normal Windows computer, and also hardening the Windows Server computer. So this is about Linux one. For Windows client computer, the general way is that you patch, you make it sure everything is patched, and also make sure the firewall is up. Firewall is there's no exception rule set up in the firewall. Remember, a user can open the Windows firewall and open some service, like open this ping response service. So if you find some Windows have opened additional port, you need to check to make sure that it is necessary or not. And for Linux, so this one, we have this vulnerable metasploitable Linux. So we use this as the example target to explain some principle for system hardening. And so this is online tutorial on hardening guide of the metasploitable Linux VM. So my slide is just reading this content and use this content and also add some additional content to compose of my slides. So this is a more complete document. So you can watch this one. It's a good one. And for general Linux system hardening, so these two links talk about general Linux hardening, like 25 hardening security tips for Linux server. These are for any Linux server, that how you can make it, how you can set it up to make it more secure and less vulnerable. These are the general principle, like physical system security. For example, configure BIOS to disable booting from USB drive or floppy drive or external device. And like a disk partitioning, make sure some disk, some directory, they will not be participating in the same physical disk as the most important directory. So these are the general principle for Linux hardening. This one is also another guide on hardening system. It's 40 tips, so it's a little bit longer. Like avoid using FTP Telnet. Telnet, you should definitely disable it because it's not encrypted channel. FTP is also the case that FTP itself is not encrypted. If you use FTP, your username or password may exposed to attacker. So here are basically, this is 40 tips for hardening Linux. So you can read them more. These two slides is about penetration testing. Just some online resource. I find that they will teach you all kinds of penetration testing lessons or tutorials. I think this is good one because the many information here are public, although they have paid lesson. So this is like some online education. So many of their class is paid, but they still have some free lessons that you can check, like a Windows forensic, like how do you use forensic tools here. Next. Where is, okay, security tools like Metasploit and Nessus, like Nmap, password cracking. Like if you click password cracking, here is one thing as how do you use some tools. So here is this is curriculum. Well, maybe this originally they have many free course, but maybe right now they don't have that much free course anymore. But anyway, it works to take a look of that. This is just from the same author of this hardening Metasploit or VM. It gives basic penetration test walkthrough as you just do initial scan, Nmap scan, then do a Metasploit attack. So this is another online resource to tell you to do this. So these are some good resources. Okay, so we try to make the Metasploitable Linux more secure. So first, to find the vulnerability, you are doing scanning. The basic scan is Nmap. You can do more scan to find vulnerability. But if you do Nmap scan, this is Nmap scan result for the Metasploitable Linux VM. First, you can see there are many open ports. If you open more port, you have more venues for attacker to attack you. Because every open port means you are running a service accepting remote user connections. So if that service has some vulnerability, it could be compromised. So for any servers or computer, you should open as few ports as possible. Only when it's necessary, you open a port to accept internet connections. So first, you can see FTP and Telnet. So certainly, you should disable Telnet. So that's these are the open port. So just to keep in mind. Let me start my own Kali Linux as exploitable. So my Metasploitable is 2.5. So Nmap. So these are the Nmap scan of the Metasploitable Linux. So these are open port. So first, there are some obvious vulnerability you can close, like Telnet. You see that Telnet port is open, so you should certainly disable Telnet. This is surely not secure. So how do you disable Telnet service? you can edit this configuration file. This is a INET, like internet configuration file. Basically, this configuration file will configure what kind of network service you are running when your system boot up. So you can, in Metasploit, because this is a system configuration file, so you can only edit it with the root privilege. So if you are logging in Metasploit as the MSF admin account, you have to use sudo and run a command. Either way is that you can use sudo su to change to the root account. Then you don't need to type sudo command for every command you are running. So right now, for example, if you want to edit that file, you have to run sudo, then run a command. But if you use sudo su, that means you change to the root privilege, change to root account, and it will ask you for this MSF admin password, because MSF admin password actually has a root privilege. So that's why you can change to root account without any problem. For a normal user account, if you use sudo su, you will not be able to change to root account because your normal account don't have that privilege. MSF admin. So once I change to the root account, I can directly do the editing. Pickle, this is inetd.config. So this is when the system boot up, these are the network service that is running by default. So each line is one service. And so you can see the Telnet here is running. If a line has sharp character before, then that means this is comment out. Comment out will not take effective. So you can simply comment out this Telnet. Then Telnet, when you reboot the Metasploit, the Telnet will not run in the boot up time. So it will not be running in your system. And here are some others. So others, I will explain them later. So you can modify this configuration file. Then you can reboot your computer. If you want to reboot, you can type reboot command and put now, means you reboot immediately. Otherwise, reboot will wait a little while then to do the reboot. So basically, you comment out this Telnet line, and then you restart your computer. Once you restart, this inetd will take effect. Then Telnet will not run in the boot up. And then if you use Nmap to check it again, you will see that the port 23 is not open anymore. So Telnet has been disabled. So you can see it's still 2.5. So if I run Nmap again, you can see that the 2225, so 23, TCP port 23 is not opened in the list. This is the previous scan. You can see Telnet here is open. So in this current scan, Telnet is not open because it is not running in the boot up time. So that's a very simple way to disable the Telnet service. Of course, you can uninstall the Telnet program. So that is another way that you can do. Apt Cache. Let me find apt get whether I can uninstall a program, remove a package. So another way is that you can use apt get remove Telnet. Try to see if you can remove it. Cannot. It's a permission denied. Oh, okay. Because right now my account is MSF admin, so I need to change to the root account in order to do that. Okay, so if I use apt get remove Telnet, let me see, and it seems do you want to continue? So one will be removed. So we will tap one, yes. It's abort.
We want you to say Y or N for yes or no.
What?
You wanted a Y or an N for yes or no. Since it didn't recognize
yes,
a one, it
sorry.
just aborted it.
Yeah, let me type wrong. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So thanks for finding out that I didn't pay attention. I put one there. Okay. So this one, it seems that it has been removed. So if you want to check, let me check if Telnet is still here. Right now, it's just the document. It doesn't have this running program. So you can uninstall using apt get remove. Let me. So this is the Telnet one. And the vulnerability we have compromised before is using Metasploit is Vsftpd 2.3.4. So that is a vulnerable FTP server running in Metasploit. You can see that FTP in the identity FTP has been disabled, but there's another line is actually Vsftpd service. So you can simply comment out this Vsftpd. Like if you see the screenshot, you can see the FTP line. The first line is comment out, but the Vsftpd line is there. So the Vsftp is running from the boot up. So you can simply comment out, and so when you reboot the Vsftpd will not run, and so because Vsftp is a protocol used by the Vsftpd service, just like Telnet, so you can do that. And another way is that you can update Vsftpd software. This can be done for normal Linux, but Metasploit, if you use apt-get update, it has issue because Metasploit, there's no app store for Metasploit Linux VM. It's not a traditional distribution of Linux. So if you run apt-get update, you will see error here. If you run apt-get update, you can see that fail to fetch because it's online store. This web page is not working, and if you run apt-get update in Kali Linux, it will work because Kali Linux is maintained by that info secure company, so they are maintaining this online store. So if you do apt-get update in Kali Linux, you can see that it is connecting to that server and downloading all the update to do the updating. So for a general Linux distribution, you can use this apt-get update to update older version of a software like Vsftpd. Even though it's not very good, it's still FTP service, but it still have updated version than this vulnerable version. So you can use this apt-get install to update to install the newest version for that particular software. So that's one thing that you can do. This command is apt cache. Is apt show is basically show what's the current installed version for a specific package. So this is apt cache. So means like if you try it in Kali Linux, apt cache show. For example, if I want to check the SSH package in Kali Linux, what's its version? Then you can see this apt cache show. It showed that the version. So this is a version installed in the current Kali Linux VM. So you can use this command to check what's the version for the installed package on your Linux computer. If it's too old, then you can update it. So basically, the simple way is comment out this vulnerable program, or you can update the software, or you can remove the software. So because the Metasploit, you cannot update it because its app store is not online, so you cannot update, and you can well, if you cannot update, maybe you can remove it because it's there's no updated version for you to use. And then you can either manually install the updated version, just like download the installation package and install it by yourself. Or if you cannot do that, you can just simply remove the service. Another way to, particularly for the Metasploitable Linux, is that you can disable the backdoor because this Vsftpd, this vulnerability is because if you connect to the Vsftpd service, an attacker, remote login person, they can create a backdoor without any problem. The backdoor is on this port, 6200. So if you can simply block this, set up a firewall rule to block any incoming connection to this backdoor port, then you can prevent attacker compromise Vsftpd 2.3.4 version in order to connect to your computer. So this is the firewall rule that you can add. In Linux, so this part is a little bit complicated because in Windows computer, Windows firewall, it has a graphic user interface. You can operate on every entry to do the configuration. In Wi-Fi router, in your home, you can connect to your Wi-Fi router and configure the firewall to configure which port you want to open, which port you want to close. Especially if you play some internet game, you probably need to configure your Wi-Fi router to open some port for your gaming service to go through. So that's relatively easy because it's all graphic user interface. But Linux firewall is not graphic user interface. It's command line based. Linux firewall is IP tables. For IP tables, this software is Linux firewall software. This is a tutorial on how you can use IP table. Of course, this is a simplified tutorial. how you can set up certain firewall rules on your Linux computer to block certain traffic, to allow certain traffic to go through. So these are more detailed firewall. So the way for you to simply block incoming connection to port 6200 on your Metasploit is do this. IP table -a means append. -a append means append this rule to existing rule set. So -a means append this rule to existing rule set. Because in your firewall, you may have a lot of rule sets. Just like in Windows firewall, let me open info, or in my host machine. Like in Windows firewall, if you click advanced setting, you can see like inbounding rule. Inbounding rule is this firewall dealing with incoming traffic to the Windows machine. So you can see how many. Yes, hello. Okay, so you can see how many rules this Windows added to these inbounding connections. Some rules are added by default. Some rules are added by certain software. If you install a software, it may add some inbounding rules. And in Linux, it's also the same case. In Linux, it already has a preset firewall rules. So you use this -a means append this rule to existing firewall rule. -a input just means this is incoming rule set to the incoming rule set. So dealing with incoming traffic. -p TCP means this dealing with TCP service. -p UDP means this dealing with UDP service. -d port means the destination port. So it just means for incoming traffic, incoming TCP traffic, that is the destination port is the 6200, then go to this rule. This rule. The rule is drop. So for any such kind of incoming TCP 6200 connection, the firewall is dropping this connection. So that's so IP table is not very hard to understand, but it has certain command that you need to remember. But it's easy to understand. This dash here means the jump to some rules, like you can drop, you can accept, you can watch or something, you can log. So those are the actions that firewall do. This action is drop the packet. Because you want to drop this connection on both TCP and UDP port, so we add two firewall rules to this to the IP table firewall. Like one is TCP drop, another is UDP drop. So after you add these two firewall, then if you use the Metasploit to attack Vsftpd on this 2.3.4, you will not be successful because the backdoor will be blocked. Cannot set up this backdoor connection. And well, when you add in this append this rule to your existing IP table rule set, this is only for this running case. If you reboot, this added rule will disappear. If you want to make this added firewall rule to be persistent, means to be permanent, you should run this IP table save to save whatever you have added the rule set to the existing rule set in the configuration file. So this will IP table save will make all your change to be persistent after reboot. So that means actually for the previous for the previous Telnet service, even if you don't disable Telnet, you can simply set up a firewall, IP table firewall rule for any coming to TCP port 23, we drop it. Then even though you are not disabling Telnet service in the Metasploitable Linux, it was still not vulnerable to Telnet attack anymore because we blocked that port. So basically, there are multiple ways. You can either not make it running from startup, or you can remove the Telnet package, or you can simply set up IP table firewall rule to block the incoming connection to that specific service. So there are multiple ways to do that. So I will add another way. Block TCP 23 incoming connections. So it will be more complete. So this IP table firewall, you can use this to add rules. Of course, you can add a rule, or you can remove a rule, or you can add a bunch of rules. So there are many ways to do. You can write a simple script to put all the IP table firewall rule that you want to add it in the script. So every time when your computer reboot, you will run that script to add this new firewall rules. So IP table, as I said, here is more tutorials on how to use IP tables. Like these are the actions you can accept, you can drop the connection, you can return, and for that, it's you can dealing with incoming traffic, you can dealing with outgoing traffic. So if this hash A, this is not input like output, that means this firewall rule is dealing with outgoing traffic. Forward is mainly used for routers. You can set up a Linux as a router. So forward means if you have two interfaces, then forward just means if a traffic coming from one interface go to another interface, then these will go through this forward rule set. So IP table is very comprehensive. You can set up router rule set. So suppose I do this. One way is that you block this backdoor. You can also disable anonymous upload for the FTP service by commenting out this in this Vsftpd, because this package Vsftpd has its own configuration file. So in this configuration file, you can comment out this anonymous upload enable rule set. Let me see. Because right now the default is anonymous enabled, this anonymous user enabled. You can disable anonymous user, or you can disable this anonymous upload. Originally is yes. So here is this is the default. You should disable this, or you can change it to be no. So then this will disable attacker to upload their program into the Metasploit and run to generate the backdoor. So these are the two steps if you want to deal with that Metasploit attack, you make it not enable this anonymous upload. You also block this port, backdoor port. If you finish these two actions, then Vsftpd connects this compromise will not be successful. Because this is this attack. So I'm just repeating this attack. This is a very simple attack. So we will just exploit, and you can see this this attack is successful because shell 1 is open. You can run uname-a. You can see that this attack is successful. But if we configure this Metasploit, we comment out this one. And then we add that IP table rules. It's IP tables. Okay. IP tables -a input -p TCP like 6200. No, -p TCP, then -d port is this port. We will jump to this action is a drop, and you can add another is UDP. If you do that, then if you do this compromise again, you can see in the previous attack, this one, backdoor service has been spawned. But this one, it seems it's stuck here. Exploit complete, but no session was created because the backdoor connection, the 6200 port, has been blocked by the IP table rule. Any questions for this part? Yeah, all the actions you can operate on your own computer, and if you want to learn more, you can just read that. Read this one. This is more complete document to explain those things. But it's not exactly the same as what I showed in my slides. I add something by myself, but the major thing is from that white paper. And remember, if you want to make this IP table root be permanent, you need to use this IP tables --save to save this root to the configuration file. Okay, another vulnerability we want to show is this Samba service. Samba service is so this is of like a Wikipedia definition for Samba. So what is Samba? Samba is a server running on Unix program. It allows Windows to share file and printer to Windows, and also allow Unix to access the Windows shared drive. So it's like a compatibility program to make sure that this file sharing can be changed between Unix machine and Windows machine. So Samba service is very popular for Unix because many Unix users, you still need to access some Windows shared drive or Windows shared printer. So this is a 2-port 139, 145. If you see this open port in Metasploit, it's 139. 145 is not open, but 139 is open. So it's here. So the NetBIOS. Okay. So and for Metasploit attack, there is one attack module to attack this so-called user map script for this Samba service. So the Metasploit Linux has this vulnerability. So there are many solutions, just like a previous we have. So you update Samba, but of course for the Metasploit Linux, the App Store is not working. So if you want to update Samba, you have to download the Samba program for Ubuntu Linux by yourself and install it on this Metasploit. But remember, the Metasploit Linux, it only has command line input, so it's a little bit complicated to do this file download and install because there is no browser for you to use on the Metasploit. You probably have to use FTP to download or SSH to download the program. Another solution is that you can disable the user map script. You can add this Samba's configuration file. It's again, you can see this smb.config file. You can comment out this map script line. Of course, for a real service, you probably cannot disable this script because this script has certain functionality. If you disable it, maybe other service you can still use, but this particular service will not be used anymore. You can comment out this Samba service. So that probably this is a simple way to do it because you cannot. Samba is very useful. Maybe you cannot simply uninstall this package or use IP table to block its port because you're still using this service. You cannot simply block or you use firewall to block the port. Then maybe the next solution is that just disable this function. While the other function will still running. I can demonstrate this attack very quickly. Search that this is what the vulnerability is. The vulnerability is a user map script. So if you use this one, and I will not change the other port. So you can see this is attacking the port is 139. So that is a Samba server. This is the payload is just a command line. So it's simple command line. You can see. So this attack is successful. Okay, the shell closed. So if on the Metasploit, if I go to Samba and smb.config, Yes. Let me see what's the line I need to comment out. Is the username map script? Okay. So it is this line. So if I want to comment out, I just add this. But this configuration just tell you what does this command used. This is for password change requested by a client. So if I do this, let me see if I can. Oh, it's still open. I think I needed to. I needed to reboot the Samba. Restart the Samba. Let me see. Service Samba status. Oh. It doesn't have this service command. Okay, this Metasploit does not install service program, because here I can check whether this service is running or not. So service is installed in Metasploit, but not in not here. But let me reboot it. So it will. I will force it to start. I think there should be easier way to restart the Samba itself, but I need to check the command. Another backdoor vulnerability is called Ingress Lock. It's a backdoor. It basically means that if you use the Netcat service, Netcat, you can think it's a little bit similar to Telnet, but it's not for remote login purpose, but for network configuration purpose. Let me. So the Metasploit has been started. Let me do exploit. You can see that this exploit complete, but no session was created because we have commented out that user script. So this attack to this map user script will not be successful. Another vulnerability is this Ingress Lock, because this backdoor basically does not need a remote user to connect with password. So you can just use a netcat, then this Metasploitable Linux IP address 1524, then you can connect it with a root account. Remember, this is this port 11524 port, and if we use a netcat 10.0.2.5 1524, you can see that you directly connected without input any password, and this connection has the root privilege. This connection has the root privilege. And so solution is that you can comment out this Ingress Lock program in this inetd configuration file. Again, it's a system startup running service. You can disable this service. After disable it, it will be if you reboot, then because that service is closed, so that port is not open anymore. I will not reboot the Metasploit anymore because it takes a little bit time. Another is post-GRE SQL. Remember post-GRE SQL, this is SQL database. It is used in Kali Linux. It is used by Metasploit. It is used by Armitage. So many Linux programs, they will use this SQL database for their backend database service. And in Metasploitable Linux, its installed version, post-SQL version, has vulnerability. Like a post, this is port is 5432. If you see the Nmap is 5432, this is basically here, this SQL database server is open to the internet. So internet user can connect and log into the SQL database remotely. In Kali Linux, even though it is running in the background, but it is not open to the internet. So in Kali Linux, your Armitage, your Metasploit can use this post-GRE SQL database, but you don't need to open this database server directly to the internet user. So then you will not be, then you don't need to worry about this internet attack to the database server anymore. So even if you in your own Linux machine, you still need to use SQL database server because many other programs use it. You can still disable this service, disable this port. Don't open your database server to the internet, because once you open any service to the internet, you're opening your computer to all the attackers around the world. So that's why when you set up any server, you should consider whenever you open a port, you should consider that it will open a big door to the whole world of hackers. So before you open any port, you need to make sure that you are doing it correctly. So for this post-GRE SQL, if you still need to run it in the background for your own server, you can simply use IP tables firewall to block incoming post-GRE SQL traffic. So basically, set up this IP table rule for input TCP port, destination port 5232, 5432. We make this incoming connection to drop. And usually this is TCP service, but most internet service, they can accept both TCP connection and UDP connection to provide flexibility. So when you set up firewall for completeness, you probably need to do this blocking on both TCP port and UDP port. So even though most connection is for TCP, but for completeness, we also add a firewall rule on UDP to block the same traffic as well. And again, if you want to make it permanent, use this IP tables save to save this rule to be permanent. So this is solution 1. And solution 2 is you change the default directory used by the exploit. So this is solution 2 is not universal. This solution 2 is specifically deal with Metasploit attack, because Metasploit attack, this attack module in the Metasploit, it uses certain default configuration in this SQL database. So as long as you change those default configuration, this specific attack module, they will not work anymore. So this solution 2 is you added this SQL configuration file and change the default directory. originally is the default directory, this one. You can change it to be any directory. Then after you reboot, this attack will not be successful anymore because they need to use that default directory for their attack module. So probably the most simple one is use IP table to block it. Let me try this attack. This attack is not hard to try. This is a post GRE payload. It's post GRES payload. Okay. Okay, so this is it's a Unix, it's a Linux one. So options set R host is Metasploitable Linux IP address, and the other parameters they have already been set, so I will not change it. If you directly do the attack, well, it doesn't work. Oh, let me see. This is meter operator. Okay, it's a little bit slow because it sent this many packets bytes to that. So meter operator is set up. So this attack is successful. And on the other hand, if we use IP tables, IP tables -A and input -P. Suppose I just do TCP D port. The port is for this is 5432. 5432. Jump to the root is drop. If I do that, and I do the exploit, connection failed because that port has been closed. You can see this is original scan. If I open a new port, and we will not be able to see, you can see this 5432. It's not open anymore, it's filtered. Filter just means that it doesn't get any response from the target machine. If the target, by default target machine, if it receives a TCP connection to a not open port, the target machine will directly send back a response, basically to close that connection or reset that connection. So Nmap know that that port is closed. Filter just means that Nmap send the TCP connection like thin packet, but the remote machine, the Metasploitable Linux, it doesn't send back any response because remember the firewall dropped the packet. It doesn't send any response. So after timeout, this Nmap shows that this port is filtered. Filtered just means it doesn't get any response. So because this port is not open connection to the internet, then of course this Metasploit attack will not be successful because the connection cannot set up. So this is this attack. And IP table rule. So this is most simple rule you can do. Use. It's very easy to remember. Another way is, as I said, you can edit this configuration file and change this default directory. But this attack will not work anymore. Another the next vulnerability is this Vnc Server. So in Kali Linux, it has installed a Vnc Viewer program. Vnc Viewer, you can think, is remote desktop client software, but remote desktop server software is a Vnc Server. The Metasploit is Linux has installed a Vnc Server by default, and also it is open to the internet. So its port is 5900. You can see this is 5900 is a Vnc. So it means that you can remote desktop to connect to that Metasploit Linux machine. Of course, for Metasploit Linux, remote desktop does not make any sense because Metasploit Linux doesn't support graphic user interface. But for normal Linux computer like Ubuntu, like a Red Hat or others, they have very nice graphic user interface, just like Windows. Then remote desktop will make sense. You can remote login to a Linux server, and you can still have this graphic user interface. The vulnerability for this Vnc server is that it has a weak password. The weak password is just the password. So that's the password for that default account. You can check this. You can check this VNC. I think it's Vnc Viewer. So you are running Vnc Viewer to connect to the remote computer. And let's see, remote computer. Then it will ask you what's the default password. And here the password is password, PASSWORD. Then you can connect. Well, so it seems, so this is a Metasploit because if you, it's tiny. You can see it's Metasploit. Because it doesn't have graphic user interface. So even though remote desktop looks like it has graphic interface, but there's no graphic icon for you to operate here. So this is the weak password vulnerability for this one. So solution, of course, you change Vnc server in the Metasploit to have a stronger password. If you don't want to disable it, of course, you can disable it. You can use IP table to block the traffic to the Vnc port. Those are the very standard operation. And if you still need the Vnc server to run, then you need to change to a stronger password. You use this Vnc password to create new password for the program. You go to here, Vnc Vnc password, this one. Then you can change to a password too short. You can use, so basically you can change to. So once you change the password, then this one, the original password will not work. So this is the simple way that you can do. Of course, as I said, the other solution is that you use IP table to block the incoming connection to this port, or you can simply disable the Vnc server from boot up stage, or uninstall this Vnc server package. Okay, I finished half, so I will finish that half in next Monday class. So I think that will be the end for the class. So we will have one more lecture at the end of in next Monday.
Thank you. Have a good Thanksgiving.
Okay, I will send out an announcement about the coverage of the final exam after the class. Then it should be clear what will be covered. Okay, that's all for today's class. Have a good Thanksgiving.
You too. Thanks, Dr. Zhu.
Will the grade, will the last homework be graded today?
You mean homework 4?
Yes.
Yeah, homework 4, the TA is starting grading, so it should finish grading within this week.
Okay.